Good afternoon, Chuck Morse. Chuck Morse Speaks. Welcome to the program here. The news is just breaking that the male bomber who has targeted major Democratic names has been apprehended by law enforcement, which is great. You know, I mean, they worked very hard to do it. It's amazing they were able to pull it off as quickly as they did. President Trump commended them for doing so. You know, President Trump and his family obviously understand what it's like to have death threats because they have them all the time, including apparently a letter with white powder mailed to the wife of Don Trump Jr. a while back. She's the mother of his 5 children. So they sympathize with this. But the question is whether or not this is a what you might call a false flag operation. I have no idea. No one does. However, it's interesting that this is all coming just 3 weeks before, I think it's 2.5 weeks before a midterm election, when Democrats have thrown everything they can at trying to win and trying to regain power. And I mean everything. It's unbelievable the amount of ugly tactics and games that have been played. I went over this in my last show yesterday, so I'm not going to revisit it entirely, other than to say that, I find this whole thing to be very, very suspicious. First of all, there's pictures on the Drudge Report of the white van that the man was apprehended in. Looks like an older van, and it has all of these very well-placed, new-looking stickers on it and pictures on it of Democrats. Almost, I mean, how could he, here's somebody who's committing terrorist acts, and he's driving around with this van. There couldn't be a bigger advertisement. I mean, the thing is an absolute eyesore. You can't miss it. And I mean, it's almost a collage of Democratic people. I'm looking at a picture of it right now. There's Elizabeth Warren and CNN, and Michael Moore is in there, and all these Democrats with signs saying, dishonest media and, Youth for Trump and all these pro-Trump things. And also the media itself, and I would add into this people that I know, in my own circles here in Boston, are absolutely giddy. I mean, they're in a frenzy of joy. Oh, yes, we finally found someone who supports Trump who's going to, engage in violence to fit into our narrative, which is, I don't know if this is a real thing or not. We have to. One thing I learned from the Kavanaugh hearings is that one is innocent until proven guilty, and that there has to be due process and a trial, and we have to see evidence, and not accuse somebody just off the bat. We can't do that in this country. This isn't a socialist state like the historic socialist states of Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. We have a due process here, and we have to let it take its course. But having said that, I just don't really find, and maybe people can disagree with me here, but I don't think that this is the way. This isn't the way liberals do things. I mean, conservatives do things. We're not into violent political acts. In general. That doesn't mean there aren't exceptions. But for the most part, conservatives, libertarians, people who would support the present administration, it's just not what they do. I mean, we're not out trying to engage in what the left calls direct action. It's the left that has instituted political violence in the world, certainly, but in this country specifically, going back to the anarchist bombings of 1919, which led Democratic Attorney General Mitchell Palmer to deport thousands of anarchists, non-citizens, including Emma Goldman, because they were involved in placing bombs in government installations and at the homes of elected government officials. Or Tom Mooney, who was a radical leftist anarchist who set off a bomb at a parade during World War I in San Francisco, killing 50 people, right? This was the left still glorifies him as a working person, as a miner, they call him. And we could go through a whole history of how the left, I mean, right up to our modern times with the Black Panthers and the Weather Underground, people who are now tenured professors and who were glorified because they were fighting for the people and all that. In other words, they're the ones who glorify political violence as a means to achieve their goals, to create terror so that the big government can come in and march in and increase its power, its footprint of power. It's part of the dialectic, and thus move the world closer to their ultimate utopian dream, which is Messiah on earth, total world government, one world and colony. And even now, it's the Democrats who are fielding this group that they call Antifa, which is a major projection, of course, because fascism is way out on the left. And that they're engaging in acts of violence and have been since President Trump was elected. And they either say nothing about it or they approve it. I mean, I just got an email from this very, very left-wing publication. I get both left and right publications. With this, I'm going to try to interview this author. He has a book out glorifying Antifa, saying, oh, well, we have a history of this they call it standing up to fascism. Euphemism for using violence against innocent people. And you have Maxine Waters out there get in people's face, harass them at their gas stations and in the restaurants. You have Republican officials like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who has to have, police protection now whenever she goes out. You've got, they're harassing Mitch McConnell, who, by the way, has, he limps from childhood polio, practically knocking him down at the Reagan airport, and other such things. And they think it's amazing. They think it's funny. Listen to Stephanie Miller over at Progressive Radio. Oh, it's a yuck a minute. They just, they actually are just regaling of this. So they're standing up to fascism. So, it's the left that has institutionalized political violence. And when President Trump criticizes the media, that's not political violence. Actually, technically, that's what the left itself had been doing for decades. I mean, I could quote left-wing relatives of mine and friends of mine in my own circles here in Boston. For years, I heard them talk about the corporate media lying and twisting stories and serving the interests of their corporate masters and that kind of stuff. Well, now that President Trump is calling them out, all of a sudden he's instigating violence. First of all, the truth of the matter is that, the media is lying. And they're dominated by left-leaning people. And that's, of course, something that's, I think, becoming more apparent all the time. So it's really the left that has institutionalized use of violence for political reasons. Whether or not this guy is actually a Trump Trump lover, I should say, and he's committing threatening violence, we don't know. We'll have to see. There'll have to be a trial. We'll have to investigate. It looks suspicious to me. It just doesn't fit the profile of people who do admire President Trump. I can't think of any example where they'd be violent. That's just not what we do. Again, there are exceptions, but it's not what we advocate. It's not how we go about creating political change, unlike the left. So I think the jury's out on it. I only hope that people see through it and do not let it affect the midterms, because that's, whether he is a false flag or not, that is exactly how what President Trump accurately calls the fake media is going to play this thing. And I don't think you're going to find a single conservative, single Trump supporter ever supporting this. And I would contrast that with the way the left does support groups like Antifa and other terrorist thug groups, both here domestically and, by the way, internationally. So those are my thoughts on the topic. I want to thank you for watching.